Welcome to the Menceptional Podcast. This is your host, Ken Arcega. Question: if you are 29 years old, had just sold your company for a large sum of money and were basically set, would you throw that money away in effect or let it wither away at some point because you couldn't answer for yourself the process that you used to get it? And I don't mean the actual business that you did, but the process you used so that you could repeat and make that money over again. Well, most of us wouldn't, but our next guest, Jack Czer, did. And it's quite an interesting choice. So we asked him about that and his current consulting and coaching businesses. So let's jump right in. Well, Jack, welcome to the Menceptional Podcast.
Thank you, Ken. It's great to be here.
So you originally started in real estate, doing your own real estate in Ireland. Is that buying and selling properties or managing properties, or what did that entail? And then how did you go from that into consulting, which is a completely different gig, really?
Yeah, so I started doing management. Lettings didn't do much sales. And with that, this was 2005, 2006, 05 is when I actually came to Ireland. And it was the market was booming, so it was very easy. All you had to do is just show up for meetings, and you would just leave with a contract, and you'd be like, "Hey, happy days!" You didn't have to do much of anything. And so, yes, the business I built it up very quickly, and then I was faced with questions of how to structure it to make it efficient, and then to optimize it to get as much as I could for the time that I put in. Mm-hmm. And that's how I was able to build up a company, which I branched out, and I created another division which offered maintenance, and that also grew out. And then when the time came, this was I think around 2010, I was a few people have approached me, and they have made some generous offers. And I have considered that, and I cashed in. I was about 29 years old. And I thought, yeah, that's a nice age to retire. So I went through that.
Wow. Okay, that's an awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, I don't have that story for myself, but when I hear that, I think, oh, that would have been cool. Now, did that come with any problems? Like you're 29 and you're kind of probably feeling like you're on top of the world, right? Right. You got the money came in and everything's great. You had mentioned a moment where you were sitting in your car. Mm-hmm. You were married at the time.
Yes.
You made great money, mm-hmm. and you're at a stoplight and there's a beautiful sunset and everything's perfect. Yeah. And then something creeps into your head.
That's true.
Like,
yes.
This is too perfect. If it all went away, I could never get it back. Then you said it started some decline in you. How did that happen?
Yeah. So the way I see it is a natural progression, and think of it as kind of like you have to take a step forward, mm-hmm. a couple steps back, step forward, and that's what happened here. Now, that's when I look at it from today. But back then, yes, it was a thought that came in and was like, man, how did I make it happen? How did it happen?
Okay.
And when I realized that I didn't have any answers, that I didn't have the key, the formula for it, I thought to myself, well, I'm not sure if this is genuine. I'm not sure if I want it, if I want any of it. I want to be able to figure out the formula. So that's.
I mean, did you feel like maybe you got lucky and you didn't deserve it? Is that what you're saying? Like,
yeah, I wouldn't say that I didn't deserve it, but I think we all deserve it. But definitely, it was more of an aspect for me that I didn't have the formula figured out, and this is something that I was after, the formula, because you never know what's going to happen. Say tomorrow a disaster strikes. No fault of your own. You found yourself in a different situation. You have to start over. Can you do it? Are you strong enough? Are you smart enough? And this is something that started me on this journey. So I am, in a way, this was start of my decline, even though I was still in coming years, I still made more money and I was far more successful than at that moment. But it started me on a journey that led to a decline, that led through a decline, and then it got me built up.
Okay, so it was a kind of an emotional decline because you said you were still making more money. Mm-hmm. You were emotionally declining. That's very interesting. I guess you kind of hear that stories of people. It makes sense, right? It's people that make a lot of money, but that's an external thing. That is not the same thing as internal. And if you don't have your internal things squared away, nothing of the external is going to fix that. Right? Is that kind of what we're talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. And then it's down to what you allow yourself to think and feel. So it's down to your mental hygiene. Okay. And you may be in the same position and never have this occur to you because you're too busy or you're focused on other things. I love philosophy, wisdom, and this is something that I wanted to explore, and I wanted a big part of my life to be about breaking it down and figuring it out. Okay. So this is something, it's not something that I regret. It's not something that I look at as a negative thing, but it is something that I see as necessary. But it was a tough journey.
Now, is that when you started doing some of this training, like the Tony Robbins or the NLP, or you did some training that I don't even know what it is, facial micro expression training. I don't even know what that is. Unbeatable Mind, Mark Divine. I actually do follow him, and I actually started a morning routine. Great. The meditation, the warrior yoga. I've kind of, went here and there after that, but I'm familiar with that. But is this the time when you started doing these things, or were you doing that already before?
No, I actually started doing that a bit later. This is after I got sort of through the worst of my decline, and I thought, okay, I am as low as I think I could be. I don't really want to explore any lower. I think this was the not the right direction if you're looking to make it your life better. So you know what? I'm actually going to start exploring the upward direction. So at that stage, I started researching and started with YouTube and started with me coming across Tony Robbins. And I did initially I did some of his programs, and that straight away that started to make a big difference. And within a year, I started to do a lot of training. So like, I don't watch news or I don't spend much time watching movies or going out. So I just applied myself into study and into learning, into improvement, into action, deliberate action. Okay. Which I was able to look at and I could see it made a difference. And this is where this other training came very handy. You asked about facial micro expression training. Yeah. That is just looking at a face. And, so it's an interesting one. You look at a face and there are certain movements, micro expressions that happen in less than a second, even less than that. Okay. And based on it, you're able to have some sort of indication as to what the person you're dealing with is feeling on the inside, which is a good indicator as to how they're going to move or what's going to happen. So it's kind of like body language off the face.
Okay. So, I did speak with someone that had trained in NLP, and she was telling me about when people talk and they're, looking up to the left or down to the right. Is that what you're kind of talking about? Okay. All right.
Or
that's not it.
That's different. Yeah, that is different. That's eye movement. That's where you're accessing your memories or where your eyes go when you, that's a pattern. That's exactly. It's not, it's been found, I think it's been found not to be 100% reliable. Whereas, micro expression training would be, it's kind of like you raise your eyebrow or you do, a movement, something that happens very quickly in your face or in your neck, and you're able to link that to a certain emotion somebody might be experiencing. Slightly different.
Interesting. Okay. So the one thing I noticed here, you also had mentioned Eckhart Tolle. So I've listened to a lot of his stuff, and it's really good. I like it because I was doing a lot of living in the future, like a lot of my life. When I achieve this, when I have this, when I blah, 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 then I will do all this stuff. Of course, the future never comes because it's always ahead of you. But the thing that screwed me up with Eckhart Tolle is you could also get complacent because like, oh, okay, I'm just going to accept everything as it is right now and it's fine and I'm good with it. But you could also just like he did sit on our park bench for 2 years and do nothing, right? So that kind of messed me up a little bit. I still kept the present moment thing, which is good. And but it doesn't help me to do things I want to do by just sitting and just like, okay, this is it. This is
yes.
You know what I mean?
You know what? I tried that model with financial trading. It didn't work out for me.
That's funny.
But yes, I think this is very important. And I do life coaching, as you mentioned before. And this is something that is very often brought up by clients, that you often introduce somebody to a book, a concept, and they just love the knowledge, they love the wisdom, and they spend a lot of time pursuing that. And then they forget that the reason they were brought to it is still unresolved. They still haven't gotten past it. So the key to it, whether you're talking Eckhart Tolle or some other, whether it's spiritual guru or whether it's a coach or philosophy, is to find the right tool for the moment, for the thing that you're struggling with or the thing that you need assistance with. And when you find that, you move over it and you keep going. But if it is your purpose to study all this, to educate yourself, then obviously nothing wrong with that. But yeah, I know exactly what you mean about there.
Yeah. It's that is a problem too, because when you read a powerful book, and I have a few I could think of in my life, it really, and you really focus on that one thing, you do kind of forget. You think that's everything. You kind of get obsessed with it, and you might not be looking at the big picture and just using it as a tool to move you forward.
Correct.
So, I mean that I don't get that caught up as much now because I have a much broader view of things. With growing up a little bit, but it's that's my take on Eckhart Tolle.
Absolutely, yeah. You have to have the tolerance, build the tolerance for it, and then apply it to what you needed.
Yeah. So, how did you when you went from after you sold your real estate stuff, you cashed in, and you kind of went in decline? Where was the moment where you said, "I'm going to be a life coach," or "I'm going to start consulting businesses"? How did those transitions happen?
Oh, okay.
A conscious choice, or did you just fall into it? Or
yeah, so I think it was just a natural progression. So yeah, initially I started with myself. At the time when I was coming out of my decline, I was overweight. I was struggling after a car accident injury, and I was just so out of shape, so I needed to address sort of every area of my life. So the moment I noticed that, these coaching materials, they actually do work when you apply them with the intent and when you execute them, then I said, well, this is great. And, who do I know in my life that could use it as well? And, initially I made the fatal mistake of trying to, introduce it to one of my friends without asking for it or without being asked for it. And, but I learned fast, and that's fine. Not everybody wants.
So you started trying to fix them when they didn't ask you for it?
More like share and say, would you study with me? Would you, that kind of stuff. And that didn't go very well. There was this enthusiasm, but it would just never translate into action. So it was just talk. And when I saw that they were just about talk, they would say the things that you want to hear, but they wouldn't follow through with action. Then it's like, nah, sorry, I can't do this with you. And so that came as a progression. The consultancy, I kind of, this was a natural thing which followed. I did build up a good set of skills on the Irish market with the property business, which when whenever I speak with various clients or business owners, these are skills that they're looking for, and they're looking to pay you for it as well. So it's, you look at it, makes more sense to be self-employed, be a consultant, and have the freedom.
Yeah. And, it's the consultancy thing is actually a big thing now, at least here in the States, with some of the online marketers. Well-known ones like a Frank Kern, who's one of the big original guys. They're doing consultancy now, and seems to be very popular, and it's a pretty big business, at least here in the States. So I don't know what it's like there in Europe.
It is, absolutely. It is. You have to have the right skill set, and then you have to market yourself, and then the economy has to be volatile enough, if you would, to for somebody to actually say, yeah, look, he's worth it, and to get you the business that you're looking for. But yeah, absolutely, great potential.
So I could see where you had the expertise in the real estate, so you can consult with that. That makes sense. The life coach, aside from your friend, how did you get your first client life coaching? Was it?
Actually. Okay, here we go. I got my first clients. Actually, did quite a bit of work with clients from the States who had illnesses, who had either terminal illnesses or had some other issues. This was actually met up with a doctor through the Tony Robbins training, and she said, "Look, I could use your services for my patients," and so I worked with her patients for about a year, and it was a very, very interesting and very, very good experience. So absolutely.
What do you do with somebody you said terminal illness? So did you actually engage with someone who has a terminal illness, and how do you what do you say? What do you do? Someone's has 6 months to live or whatever it is. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. And you go into these appointments and you're thinking, my God, but when you focus on what the person needs, and when you give it your best, and when you apply yourself to it, then that is exactly what they're looking for. Obviously they don't go to you because they expect you to, perform a miracle on them that would be outside of your remit, but they go. And so I was okay with that aspect of it. And I think a lot of these people have gotten great benefit.
Wow, that's pretty well. Yeah, I mean, not to go too far off tangent there, but I guess someone that's looking for a coach is looking for something. They need to get themselves going in a certain direction. So I guess in general, you just have to read what the person is looking for, what problem they have, and help understand where they could go, right?
Correct. And this is easily done once you understand the communication and how people communicate, because oftentimes they will share an issue with you, which is just a code, which is just a hint for, there's actually something else under. And you have to be able to determine that, break it down, and to say, look, you said this, but isn't that really what you're looking for? And they think about it and they say, yeah, listen, you figured it out. And then you can start working on the actual thing. And oftentimes that can lead you to something else, right? It just depends on how the person wires themselves. But you have to be able to see what's underneath their statements or what they're saying to you.
Right. So I was just thinking, if you're a life coach, or you're life coaching someone else, what happens if you as a life coach need a life coach? Does that happen?
Absolutely. And sometimes I think of it, I could use a good life coach. And I do have a few friends who are in the industry, and we kind of support each other. Okay. So that is always great to have. But at the same time, I've developed a practice where this is something that is kind of like when you partition a hard drive, you go into a meditative state and you you go into your area where you can detach from maybe your personality or your prefrontal cortex, if you would, and or partition it, and then get some of that. Look at yourself, assess yourself from that angle. Right? It's a skill that when you develop it, it can come in very handy.
Now, how do you know? How do you know when you're reading a situation correctly and what the prescription is? Is this this is from the training that you had, the various trainings, right? Tony Robbins or what have you. Is that so? There's a structure there.
There is, yeah. So there would be a lot of strategies, but it starts with listening, with empathizing, with understanding where the person is.
Okay.
And once you understand what they're about, how they look at the world, what the world model is, then when you empathize with them, you can actually start off with where they are, and then you apply the strategies that whether it's Tony or some other training. I've also studied NLP, hypnosis, and then you just use the best tool that you can find for whatever the issue is at the moment. And it's not the case that there's this great tool and I'm gonna do this for you, but oftentimes it's small realizations, and that's the way that I like to work. I like to burst people's bubbles, and by that I mean limiting beliefs. And when you challenge enough of them, the model which was disempowering them collapses. And once it's collapsed, there's a vacuum, and you then need to give them a meaning, interpretation, a way of looking at their life or at whatever the situation is in a way that empowers them.
Okay. So
creates more value.
So I have an example here that I'm curious about myself in the States, and not to get into politics and all that. That's not the point of this discussion. There's a lot of victim mentality going on that politicians push, and again, like I said, not to get into all the stuff, but there's reasons they do that to separate people out and get people dependent upon them to come, for the votes, so because they're going to come fix it. But our culture these days, there's a lot of victimhood going on, which, as you know, we mentioned Jocko Willink and extreme ownership.
Yes.
There's no such thing as being a victim, right? You're responsible for your outcome, for everything that happens. It's just extreme.
Totally.
So totally. If you are talking to someone, you can obviously see they're putting themselves in a position as a victim in life. Let's say, everything that happens because they're a victim. How do you get people out of that? I know people myself, and I'm not a therapist or a life coach, but I don't know how I would get them to see that if they're so dug in on it. Well,
number one, do they want to see that, or are they comfortable where they are?
Well, I don't know. I think people just, maybe they're trained and it's embedded in them, and maybe people like to just stay at that state. I don't know. I don't have any experience at all.
Yeah. So Mark Twain once said that it's easier to fool people than to convince them that they've been fooled.
Oh, Mark Twain, man, that guy is so smart. That's a great quote.
I think I'm quoting it correctly. If I'm not, apologies, but I think it's something along those lines. So yeah, there is a moment when people need to come to a certain realization about themselves or about the way that they live out, because I don't think it's effective when you walk around and you choose to challenge people's belief systems when they're not ready to challenge them, they're not ready to pop out of their shell, their eggshell, what have you, whatever they're in. But the moment when they start to realize that this is not working, or I need to see the world differently, but I don't really know how it works. At that stage, they are ready to start discussing things like that. But if you walk around, or if you apply this to somebody who's not ready, they might not even acknowledge what you're saying to them. But the victim mentality, it's things happen to me versus I make things happen.
Exactly.
They happen to everybody. Like when it rains on everybody. But some people will say, "Cool, nice little drizzle." Some people will say it's horrible day. It's the meaning that we put to. It's how we react to the situation that we see in front of our eyes.
Right. And I guess maybe if somebody were reaching out to a life coach, maybe they're open to understanding what their problem is. Whereas if somebody is just going along, you can't just go and start telling people, what to do, or, hey, you've got a victim mentality, and and they're not ready for that discussion at all. It sounds, like you're fruitless, or you're going to get punched in the face or something. But anyway,
that's something that I love about consultancy, because I deal with probably a couple hundred people every year, mm-hmm. and I get some people are just not very agreeable with you. and sometimes you can experiment. So yeah, I've tried that before with some people that, where I would just openly say, well, you can't go through life with this kind of mentality where you think that, some people are actually receptive, and straight away they change and they adapt and they say, yeah, you're right. And some people just take offense, and then they accuse you of being, insensitive, or so it's something that I've kind of learned from experience, where I could sort of within the remit of a conversation and the consultancy capacity. And that's something that I'm very grateful for.
So you mean, you'll read if the person might be receptive to a comment? Is that what you're saying? Or?
Well, yeah, in the coaching situation, that's different. Okay. So in the coaching situation, I wouldn't be experimenting, but so I would be applying what I do know. The way that I would know if somebody's ready to make a shift is by, I would see, and this is where my other training comes in. I would look at how they respond, and also introduce things slowly, at a speed, at a pace that they can handle. Now, if they're making leaps and they're making, and they, you put out a concept, they put it back to you, they understand it, they're rolling with it. They're actually practicing it. Then you see that they're ready to make the shift. They're ready to, and you build on that. But when you see that you're stuck, then there's either a situation where they don't really want to make a move, or that you haven't really figured out what they're after, and you have to do a little bit more digging. And this is where the skill of knowing your client, knowing who you work with, comes in very, very handy.
Okay. So kind of going to another topic. How do you? One thing we try to learn on the podcast is how people, what the mindset or daily habits or any tactics, let's say. What are some of those that you would use on a daily basis to make sure you've got yourself, reset to zero in the right frame of mind? Because it's not just your own, path that you're going on, but you've also got all these other people you're consulting and coaching, right? So I assume you need to be right on track in the zone in order to serve those people. So correct. How do you mentally keep yourself straight every day?
Well, I started with a simple premise. I'm doing everything for myself first. So if I'm on the ball, that's my main priority. That's my main objective. Is when I wake up, I need to be on the ball, and that's the first thing. And that comes in with a morning practice, morning routine. Mm-hmm. And this is something that I was introduced to by SEALFIT, or by Unbeatable Mind, I should say. Mm-hmm. And this is it's great. It's absolutely improved my life. I can't even say how much, but you have and also in combination with Tony Robbins, because I actually started it based on Tony's program. But then SEALFIT took it to the next level, or I should say Unbeatable Mind took it to the next level. So I'd be doing, the routines may change slightly, but more or less they're kind of like, get yourself hydrated. So first thing I do is I drink a large glass of water, cold water.
Okay, I do that. I do this. I do that. Check. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Got that. Yeah. I would do yoga, 15 to 20 minutes a yoga session in the morning, first thing.
Yeah. So I don't do that anymore. I do like burpees or something, but an exercise. Okay.
Okay. So you do. So sorry, I would do yoga, and then I go into a meditation for about 10, 15, sometimes 20 minutes. And that can be either meditation or can be self-hypnosis. And after that, I do about maybe 5 minutes. And this is just intense training where I would do push-ups, sit-ups, and burpees as well. So I would do about 50 of those. I wouldn't go sort of much more than that, just to get because when you're coming out of a meditative state, you want to get the blood flowing again. And I find it to be a very good sort of shift. So you're going from this, calm state where you're just jumping up and bam, you're going full blast.
Right.
After that, I would go and have a juice. So Lou Corona, I don't know if you're familiar with Lou Corona's recipes. He's got a great recipe for juicing, which I use for the last couple of years. And it's excellent. It's excellent. So yeah, drink a juice. It's mostly veggies, right? Like lemon, celery, mint, that kind of stuff. And then have a breakfast, right? And then you feel that you're switched on and you're ready to start your day.
Got it.
So
how early do you get up in the morning to do this? Usually
around between 6 and 7, but I do notice that my sleeping hours do shift with the light, with the amount of light that is available. My room is actually blacked out, so it is quite dark. But I notice as I get older, I require less sleep. So currently, I'm at about 5 to 6 hours a day, and so that can vary. But usually around 7 a.m. Usually around 7. Although there are instances where I would be up at 5 even.
Okay. And so that gets you squared away and you're like reset and you're ready to go from there.
Yeah. And, there's some challenging days as well where, you were at the gym and you worked out harder, or your body didn't recover. And you wake up and you just have a day where you're like, man, it's just hard to move, but the moment I start doing yoga, the moment I start moving, the pain goes away. And when I apply myself to it, I don't no longer focus on what's wrong. I focus on the flow, what's going right. The mind is clear and I start to feel better. And then I can, I know that I'm going to have a much better day than I would if I left it out. Yeah.
So for the listeners, what would be your advice? Either things to look at. You had mentioned the unbeatable mind. What would be your general advice for the listeners? It seems to me like and I follow Jocko Willink. I'll just bring that up because we talk about him, and I follow him on Instagram. His watch, 4:30, he's up doing kettlebells, whatever. Right. I don't get up that early, but do you have something a tip that you would give to listeners to maybe get themselves started? Is this the type of thing that you would tell your coaching people, customers?
Yeah, the morning routine, absolutely. It's all about routines. I mean, what are goals? When you look at people that set goals in their lives, those really are activities that you're planning. And then to make those goals happen, you need to identify what activities they are, and then you need to perform them, repeat them as best you can, or I should say, not even in a way that is adequate for you to achieve that. So yeah, the morning routine is absolutely critical for that. It keeps you focused, it has you organized. It's the right start of the day. And Jocko Willink, absolutely Extreme Ownership. That is a very good book. That what he says, absolutely 100%. I've applied it in my life, and everything from financial gain to health benefits. Yeah, 100%.
So, kind of go back on when you had the decline and or getting yourself out of it. What was the, I think a lot of people find themselves in a rut, right? Yes. Especially, even later in life, and then they have, the midlife crisis, and, a lot of people have a similar thing as you describe. And I think might be grasping at straws to find some way out, or, is it just a change in mindset? Is it, It must be, I would think. But what came about for you that flipped the switch, and maybe someone that's in that position right now, what's the way for them to grab onto something and, try to make a change?
Yeah, so there are so many ways to look at it. It's funny you mentioned the midlife crisis. I think I started going through that before I was 30 even.
Pre-mid.
That's it. Yeah, quarter life crisis is what they call it these days, I think.
Quarter-life,
So it starts with awareness, because I think people are executing how they were conditioned from early on for the first 20, 30, 40 years of their life. They are, and then once that mentality gets challenged enough for that not to stand on its own anymore, then they are starting to, that paradigm, that world is starting to fall apart. And then they are starting to look for something else. And this is where this crisis comes in, where, stuff that was making sense isn't making sense anymore, and creates a vacuum where people are experimenting and looking for things. And it's a journey, right? I don't think it's a bad thing. I don't think it's anything scary to have this crisis in one's life, but a sense of direction and knowing that, yes, look at other people and say, right, okay, others have been in these situations. They've made their lives better. They came back bigger, better, stronger, faster, and they're far more successful now. This is an evolution. It's something that when you go through it, you come out stronger. If you're in a rut, you need to find out, you need to look at what it is that motivates you, what it is that you're looking for. If you may experience that there may be some health issues which are caused by the way that your lifestyle, which I find often with clients when they don't eat proper foods, or healthy foods, I should say, or if they don't get enough sleep, then they may have some hormonal issues which may affect the way that they perceive things, and they don't feel as though they're strong enough, or they don't feel as though they can make it. And that sometimes is also used as an excuse that, I've tried, but I didn't make it.
So this is very interesting. So sorry to jump in, but just to make a point here. So you're saying somebody might feel like they're in a rut, on the wrong track, whatever, but maybe there are small things they can address that might help them move forward, right? So let's say it's the diet, they're out of shape and bad health, right? You could see where that obviously could affect the way you think as well. So maybe instead of having that epiphany where you just the next day your life is just different, maybe at least start addressing your health issues, start thinking about having a better diet and start walking or something, just starting somewhere, addressing something they can address to start getting out of that rut. Am I reading that right?
Correct. Yes. And it starts with, there really is no excuse. I mean, I think Jim Rohn said, at age 50, how much should you be overweight? How many pounds should you be overweight at age 50? What's the right answer to that?
Well, the right answer, you shouldn't be overweight. Right?
You shouldn't be, right? So it's what you allow, what you tolerate is what you get, right? That's one of I think that's what Tony Robbins is saying. What you tolerate is what you get. So firstly, look at what you get, what you're getting, and ask yourself, okay, am I okay with this? Okay. And if you're not, then start searching, start educating. But it starts with making these little changes, and you need to be able to determine what it is that could make a difference for the person. But yes, absolutely. What I'm getting at is you really should tune your body and your life to the best possible setup so that you can be the best yourself.
Okay.
And this may be a bit enigmatic as to what I mean, but that means the proper nutrition for your body type, for your lifestyle, the proper sleep, proper surroundings, the network of people that you're with, because sometimes that can be a factor. So there are many things, but what I'm saying is you need to be able to look at all those and see what's empowering you, what's disempowering you, and one variable at a time start addressing and improving upon those. Some people can handle much more in one go. Some people can't.
Got it. Yeah. I mean, for me, I like to just make not a crazy change, like changing personalities or anything like that, but I would prefer to make a bold step. It's just my thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So would you say that this whole thing, called life is a process, things happen and, you have to work your way out of it. And it seems like everything's always a process. You kind of get out of one thing and you move forward. And like for you, for instance, you kind of got out of that phase in your life, but you probably have new goals now. Like what are your new goals now? And is it just a continuation of this process?
Yeah, a lot of people are very, what I found early on that empowered me versus disempowered me in context of your question is that people are just focused on having goals and being obsessed with them. And that's great. But it doesn't mean that you need to be having goals, new goals every, 6 months or something like that. The way that I look at it in my life is, yes, I have long-term goals, which I am accomplishing one day at a time. And they would be sort of in personal, they would be the health, fitness, family, relationships. And in terms of business, it would be delivering better service to my clients, growing the coaching business, and also financial trading, which is something that I started to do about 2 years ago professionally. Okay. So
by financial trading, what do you mean on that? You mean trading, like?
Yeah. So this is something that, as many people, you wake up one day and you say, okay, if I got ill tomorrow, what would happen? Would I have a source of income? Would I have enough cash to survive for the next 20, 30, 40 years? What about my kids, And if you say, if the answer is no, then you should probably focus on creating a machine that will earn you money even while you're sleeping, right? And that may be a cliche statement, but it's something that I am building and I'm pursuing. So about 2 years ago, I went into this, I started up a venture with a computer programmer and a stockbroker. And I was the person running it, and I was responsible for getting investors in. And we put together an operation, registered a company and everything. And we started to do trading, as in the trader started to do trading. But I was not very experienced in it. So this became a learning experience where, within a year, I had to let go initially of the computer guy and then the stockbroker when his strategies just were not working. They were not delivering. So I took upon that responsibility of educating myself, learning, studying, taking one day at a time. And that's what I've been doing. That's what I've been applying myself to. So this is, it's a slow burner, but it's coming. And it's something that even if it takes me 10 years, I'm determined to make it happen, and I will make it happen.
Yeah, it's better slow than steady. I've had my own forays, adventures into futures and all that stuff. I have a good setup now, but I'm just focused on other things. It's something I like you probably be a slow burner on the background. It's just not my time to focus on it. But
that's it.
Yeah, I have. I've let's just say I've lost some money learning, to put it bluntly.
Well, it's kind of like education, right? I mean, a lot of traders are saying that, to be a doctor or a lawyer, you need to, go to, get your degree 4, 8, 10 years, whatever, and it costs you tuition. Same thing with trading. Tuition money.
Tuition. I went to an Ivy League level tuition. I do enjoy it, but that's a whole other thing. So I wanted to ask you, when I have guests on, I kind of made up the term in my mind, manceptional.
Yes.
What would be your image of someone who is a man who's manceptional?
Mm-hmm.
And it's a made up word, but what would your thought be?
Absolutely. I would say it's a person who is an authentic self. It's a guy who, knows what he wants. Firstly, takes the time, makes the effort to know what he wants, breaks out of the shell, the limiting, conditioned environment that he was brought in, to see what is real. And that has a sort of a different meaning once you actually focus enough on it. And then sets up goals for himself and works on improving himself to be the best version of himself. I used to get uncomfortable around people that I could see, whether they looked better, they were bigger, had bigger muscles, were faster, wealthier, what have you. I used to get, uncomfortable around that. But then I'm thinking, I'm not competing with these guys. I'm competing with myself. I could never compete with this guy and beat him at being him. But I can compete with myself from today and be a better myself.
Be a better you. Yeah. That's a funny, I like the way you laid those out. That's a funny thing where people compare themselves to others, I guess it must be a natural human tendency to do that, but you're right. It's, you just have to be yourself. On top of that, I have interviewed some women on the subject and of what's attractive to men. And a lot of those things that men think are attractive, like physically being in shape and all that stuff, it's actually not. It's about 80%. It's the personality, but it entails some of the things you just talked about: confidence, having a plan, working towards that goal. Those are actually, believe it or not, the things that women find attractive.
It's the character. It's the character behind the person. Right, because oftentimes when you see a lot of people, they're selling you techniques or little life hacks, which will get you there, they'll get you by, but they're not selling you a long-term solution, which you can only arrive at if you work on your character. And when you build your character and when you're authentic to it, when you take responsibility for your successes and your failures, and at that stage you become authentic.
Yeah.
And that's awesome. A great base from which you can build yourself.
Yeah. And I would say, I agree with you. That's a manceptional man, being aware of yourself, seeing what's real, coming up with a plan and executing on that plan to better yourself for your goals. Yeah.
So that's the basis of it. Absolutely.
That's awesome. Well, okay. We just solved everything. Fantastic.
Nice one.
Yeah. So Jack, thank you so much for coming on. I enjoyed this conversation. I don't know if there's anything else to add to that, but I think that's a great way to kind of cap off the discussion.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for having me. I will just maybe throw a phrase at the end here. Sure. That helped me along the way to stay motivated, stay on track, stay on focus. And that you probably heard it, that it's do today what others won't, so that tomorrow I can do what others can't.
Oh, I have seen that. I love that. Who do you know who wrote that? Do you know?
I think it was a football player, but I can't recall his name now.
Yeah, but I do remember that quote. That's an awesome quote. Mm-hmm. Fantastic. So how could people get in touch with you? What's the best way for them to get in touch or find out more about you?
Yeah, I have a website, and it's jackcercoaching.com.
Okay, maybe spell that, because you're the last four letters. Yeah,
sure. So it's Jack, JackCzer, coaching, COACHING.com.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it was more your last name, the CZER.
Got it.
I could throw people. Okay, fantastic. I will. Well, our listeners will be able to look you up there. So that's cool. That's great. Okay, fantastic.
Nice one.
Okay, take care, Jack.
Thanks, Ken.
Okay, bye.
See ya.